Hey everyone, welcome back to Brown Coat Nerd, and today we're going to be looking at the Susat Sight Unit Small Arms Trilux, or the L9A1 4-powered optic. So, we'll get this guy out of here real quick. I wanted to make this video. First of all, there's really no good videos on YouTube going over these optics. There's a ton of videos on airsoft copies, and really I've only found one video that goes over specifically a real Susat optic, and they go over both mount patterns, which we now have here. And if you are interested in these, I highly recommend you go check those out. That was done by the Armorer's Bench. There's a fellow on there that named Vic that is going over these, and he also discusses removing the tritium vials, which is either for exportation out of UK or importation into the US. I'm not sure which one. And I'm pretty sure that is who Marklemar actually purchased their lot, or their initial lot of 150 of these from. So, as you can see, it comes in original packaging here. And I believe that is the NATO part number. And getting all the corners here for you. And then this here, that is something that Marklemar added. That is the serial number to my LVS. Marklemar actually cited these in on their LVS clones that they made. So you can see here's Sight Unit Small Arms Trilux Susat L12A1, which is the name of the scope with the mount. The scope on its own is the L9A1. And then you can see here, no radioactive material contained in this device. Tritium light source has been removed. It is worth pointing out that label is slightly different on the Mueller mount, or commercial mount version. It is still labeled L12A1, which actually technically I do believe that is incorrect. Whoop. Since we are on the Mueller mount. But here it says no radioactive material contained within this device. Tritium light source is spent. I'm pretty sure that light source has still been, or the tritium vial has been removed. But just a little minor detail there. So we'll go ahead and pull this guy out. Now I already went over this one quite a bit in my review of the Marklemar Sent Me LVS clone. Yes, those are clones. They are not made from LVS parts kits. They just took a standard L and put the Susat rail on it and made a clone of the LVS along with some of the markings. But anyways, so what this is, it is a 4-powered die-cast prism optic. It does have a tritium light source, or rather, did have a tritium light source. Has a field of view of 10 degrees. It was initially made for the L85, L86 series of rifles. This optic would later be replaced by the L-Can Spectre optic. And these were developed by Royal Armament Research Development Establishment. And then looking around, it looks like it was made by 2 or possibly 3 different places. Information on these optics was not the easiest to find. I get a lot of it from the Armorer's Bench video that they did on these. And then just kind of digging around, I got a little bit of stuff from Wikipedia, but there's not a ton of info out there. But it looks like the companies that made these would be the United Scientific Instruments, along with Avimo Thales Optics. Now, I do believe Avimo Thales Optics is one company. It might be 2 companies. That's why I say it was either made by 2 or 3 companies. But there you go. So real quick, like I said, it is a prism optic. In here we kind of have a little pointer, which is very much like the Suit sight, which came before this, that was on the FALs. And that pointer would come down from the top on those rather than coming up from the bottom. And as an example of me trying to get information on these optics, I went to a lot of forums asking questions about them, and people were like, oh no, you mean the Suit sight, not the Susat. There's just not a lot of these Susats in the US. One, we don't really have anything to mount it to actually use these. There are no semi-auto SA-80 series of rifles. There is a very, very, very small handful of full auto SA80s in the US. I've seen several videos. I think Ian's done some videos with those. I think it was like Grand Thumb. And those actually have the Mueller mount style of mount on here, which I thought was pretty interesting. Which, being on an SA80, I think is technically incorrect. It would have this style of mount with the scope, and this style of mount is the L12A1. But the Mueller mount's a little bit easier to adjust, so I don't know if they did that on purpose or not. Not a whole lot of these in the U.S. Markelmar, when they did their initial importation of these, they imported 150. And actually, Vic Armorer's Bench mentions how he's removing the Teridium vials out of a lot of these for exportation to the U.S. So I think Vic is actually who Markelmar purchased these from. I'm not 100% positive on that, though. And I do know that Markelmar stated that their importation of their initial group of these of 150, which they only imported 150 with the L12A1 mount, that was the single largest importation of them into the US. They ended up selling 20 of those to collectors, and so they made approximately 130 of the LVS clones. I do want to point out, whenever Markelmar puts a number on their specific models that they're making, those are approximate. Those aren't dead set. Those are just kind of rough numbers. So what we have here with the L12A1, we do have a set of backup sights on the top there, which, aren't the best. Got quite a bit of sight overboard there. I did mention it is a prism optic. This little knob here is how you would adjust the Teridium vial. So it wasn't just on and off, and that would light up the little pointer there. So you could have it, lit up a little bit to all the way, and I'm not even sure which direction would have been, quote unquote, on and off with these guys. Like I said, they are removed. While we're on this, if you do watch the Armorer's Bench video, Vic mentions how he has an easy fix for this. Do not get excited, because unfortunately at the end of the video he got some little Teridium vials off of eBay, put them in here. He did not have any success with them. I've been telling myself I'm still going to try to do something with that. Eventually I will. I haven't done anything with it yet. I'm even thinking about trying to find a site company in the US to send this off to and have them properly put in a Teridium vial. I don't know how much that would cost. Also, the downside is it's going to have a shelf life, so eventually it will die out. So even if I pay a whole bunch to get it done, after X amount of years, it would have to be redone if I wanted to keep that lit up. We do have windage adjustments on the front here. It is these little nuts. You got a screw in there. This was kind of the downside of these. Basically, if you wanted to adjust it, you'd back off one side and then tighten in the other side, and you've got these nuts then that you would cinch it down and tighten it with. My understanding, it went through 2 revisions. I do believe initially it was just a screw that you would cinch down. Then they added the outer nut, and then they added the little washer as well. Now, from pictures I've been trying to look up online and information, the overwhelming majority of what I am seeing is the final iteration that you see here. I do not know if the earlier ones were upgraded to be like this. I would imagine that is the case. So this is the style that you will see, and you do see as a little indicator, which way to move it right, which way to move it left. Then your elevation is right back here. You got a little bump here for your closest, or I guess quote unquote, battle site, and that would be 300 meters. The L12A1 initially was put out with a range from 300 to 800 meters in 100 meter increments, and apparently there were some later versions that went all the way up to 1200 meters. This one here only goes to the 800 meters. And you can see once again, down, up. It's got a little direction for you. And all of the adjustments to this site, they're not internal. So the windage and elevation, obviously, it's all done specifically just to the mount, which I do think probably aided in the durability of these optics. This was kind of like the one good thing about the L80 series, is from what I read, these optics are pretty much indestructible. Like I said, the windage adjustment is the one downside of this. For example, Markmar does say when you bought one of their LVS clones, which they're now out of stock on, we'll circle back around to that at the end here. They do cite these in at Markmar, so that was pretty nice. I've only taken my LVS out twice. The first time with the L12A1 setup, and it actually shot pretty spot on. I did notice once I came home, though, these nuts were a little bit loose. I did not check before I went out to make sure they were good and tight. So, like I said, one of the downfalls. Also worth pointing out, there was a little sight or windage adjustment tool that they did issue with these. When I first got this, I looked on eBay. I found several, and they were fairly cheap. And then they all of a sudden dried up. So I did not get a chance to get an original one. However, Markmar did supply their own little tool, which is kind of handy there. Got their little logo on it, so that was nice. Let's see. And then we have our little wing nuts here. This is the rail it would go onto. You have a little plunger that you would position it in. You had, 3 or 4 spots. Kind of the middle spot was kind of like you had a forward and back, and then you had a forward and reverse spot, at least on the rail that's on the Markmar LVS. So you'd get it where you wanted to, you would depress that, and then you lock it down with the wing nuts. It is worth pointing out that once you depress this and get it locked in, it does not go all the way down like you see here. So when you have it on the gun, it sticks up a little bit, and this tab's kind of loose. So like when you first put it on there, you're like, oh, criminy, is that on there proper? And it is. That's just how it is once it's on the actual rail. We do have some markings here. I am too much of a chicken poop to remove either of my optics from the rails because I do not want to break them. These are not cheap. They're not easy to come by, so I'm just going to play it safe. Now, I do believe both of mine, we'll get the other one out here in a moment, were made in 1988. So there is that. You have a little part number. And I will say on the Armorer's Bench video, he does take the rail off of one of these. So if you're curious about everything, that's all the markings underneath there, because there are some more additional markings. And then we have, it's not the easiest to see, the little radioactive sticker there, since this did originally have tritium in it. Okay. And guys, I apologize, my notes are all over the place. One thing that I thought was very interesting, though, is, like I said, I was trying to get more information on these. I reached out to Bloke on the Range. He actually has an LA, I don't know if it's an 85 or 86, but it's got the L12A1 optic on there. I think he even has a video on YouTube of him sighting in the optic. So I decided to reach out to him on Instagram, and I was like, hey, what do you know about the Mueller mount optic? I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. And I was just trying to find any information I can on the Mueller mount, because not a whole lot of information on these, even less on the quote-unquote commercial or Mueller mount version. And he replied back with, I've never heard of them. And I was freaking blown away. At that point, I'm like, okay, I'm no longer a hobbyist. I'm a collector. I made it. So I thought that was very interesting. Also, one more reason for you all to follow me over on Instagram. But I was blown away that Bloke on the Range was completely unfamiliar with them. And of course, I shared a picture, hoping that he'd be like, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. And no, I got a like from him, but he had no further information to share on that. So, let's hop over to the new edition that we have here. Like I said, this is, I don't know if I said it, this is my second take of the video. This is labeled L12A1. Technically, I think that is incorrect. This is the L12A1 with that type of mount on there. This guy here, technically I believe, is the UT12600R. also known as the universal mount or the commercial mount or the molar mount. And molar, I believe, is spelled Muehler. When I was originally discussing this with Marklemar, that is how the owner had spelt it. When I got my receipt, it was spelt Muller. I think that just might have been a clerical error. So, we'll get this bad boy out. I was very, very excited to get this. I was aware of these before I was able to get my hands on this from the Armorer's Bench video, so please go check out Vic. But this is the setup that they would sell to other countries. Yes, other countries did use this. Obviously, we know Spain did. Spain used it on their LVS rifle. They also used it on their Amili machine gun. Other countries that use this include Cameroon, Oman, and Sweden. I believe Sweden used this on their G3 pattern rifles. One interesting thing to point out is Spain obviously doesn't use it on the LVS. They retired the Setny L pretty early. They only used that gun for about 10 years. They did continue to use the Amili, and then they eventually replaced the Amili, and they took all of the Muller mount optics off of their Amilis and installed them on their MG42s and MG3s, which are chambered in 7.62 NATO. So obviously, I'm not sure if they remarked the sighting units on here for that, or exactly how they went about that. So, once again, the sight itself is the exact same. This one also made in 1988. They are both marked AVL. I do not know if that's the manufacturer marking, or if that was just something put on all of them. I could see that as being the Avimo Thales. That is spelled AVIMO, Thales Optics. It might not have anything to do with the manufacturer at all. So, it installs the exact same way. Another thing worth pointing out, which is my own fault, on my review of the Set to Me LVS, let's see if I can get it up here without knocking stuff over. I mentioned about how this rail is different between the two scope mounts, and I was incorrect on that. I got that from the Armorer's Bench video. It's just the way he says it. It was a little misleading to me. I went back and watched it again. I'm like, okay, I could see how he's just talking about how stupid that this rail in general was proprietary, not specifically the L12A1. So, if you've got this, both of these optics will fit on there. You can see here, that's kind of the middle position where you can put that plunger at the back or the front. Let's get this out of the way before I knock stuff over. So, did want to clarify that real quick. And Marklemar has mentioned that they did come across some schematics or pictures of the LVS with this specific style mount, the L12A1. So, not historically inaccurate to have this on an LVS. Would have been extremely less common than this style. Excuse me. So, this one we have some changes. One, you can see the rail itself is quite a bit shorter. Our elevation, instead of being on the back here, and looking back, did I call this windage earlier? I apologize if I did. The elevation is no longer on the back here, but we now got this big dial right up front. And these go from 100 to 600. And I believe that was, they didn't change this, it was just 100 to 600 for these mounts. Where this guy was 100 to 800, and then later 100 to, what did I say, 1200? Yeah, 1200 meters. Our windage, which I really liked about these, got rid of this crappy little screw set up there. And we now have the windage adjustment at the back, which can either be done by a wrench or a flathead screwdriver or something flat that you can jam in there. And then to zero the optic would be this front adjustment you see there. And of course it does look like a suit sight from the front. You see that pointer coming down. That's just how the prism works when you're looking at it from the front. It's still the same setup as the other one. You still have the plunger, and then your wing nuts. These wing nuts are ever so slightly different. There's a very slight curve to the end of the wing nuts compared to what we have here. That just might be a change done over time. I'm not positive on that, but like I said, both of these are from 1988. It's also worth pointing out, you can see there's a slight finish difference on this. This one's a little bit shinier. This one's more of a matte finish. Once again, this could just have to do with who made the gun, or excuse me, who made the optic. Because in Vic's video, I believe his molar mount optic is got kind of a shiny finish, and I think his L12A1 has kind of the matte finish. So I don't think it's specific to the mount that it would have used. Let's see here. Went over the ranging, and other than that, the features on the optic itself are the same. You get your tritium adjustment there, your backup iron sights on top. Also, if you want to remove this, it is worth pointing out that all it is just that little screw there. I was looking, I don't think there's any difference in the knob. I was thinking this one might have been a little bit thicker than this one, but I think they're all the same, just has that finish difference on there. Also looks like we have assuming a serial number for the mount right there. I don't believe our L12A1 has a serial number. We got a number 4. I don't know if that's like a batch number or something. And you can't see it, but there's a 1 stamped down in there. And then we just have the little markings for the windage and the elevation. Yeah, nothing really extra on this. We just have that serial number. Doesn't look like we have any markings on the bottom here. So, how did I get this? I've been kind of keeping this quiet for a while because I wasn't sure exactly what was going to come of it. First of all, I was alerted about these before they even got to the country. Wasn't sure if they're going to get past customs in the UK, especially with everything going on in Ukraine. But they made it here. I do want to point out that Pourin Diesel on YouTube did do a very short video of one of these mounted to an LVS. Looks like he went to a gun show somewhere, and Marklemar had set up a bench there, and you can hear Dave speaking in the background. But he discusses how Marklemar is going to be putting out another limited batch of LVSs with the more common on the Spanish Set Me molar mount. In the video, he states that they'll be putting out another 60. When I spoke with Dave about this, he was only able to get his... It sounded like the total number that he was getting was 60. Him being a collector himself, I'm sure he's keeping one for himself. Here is another one. I don't know if he got a hold of other LVS owners. He was initially kind of concerned that LVS owners were going to be upset, I think, at him putting out more. The LVS variant was a very limited number. Like I said, originally it was going to be 150, but then it only ended up being about 120. And they weren't the cheapest version of the LVS, or the Set Me L. It was actually the most expensive version of the L. And so I think he was just concerned he was going to piss off people by thinking, oh, well, I've got this limited one, and now you're putting out even more. Plus with the more common Spanish optic. I gave him my 2 cents. I was like, hey, the people that got this LVS, I don't think it'd piss them off. It's not going to piss me off. They understand it was just kind of a circumstantial situation. He couldn't get his hands on these initially. And like I said, he only got his hand on 60 of these. And that's probably, I'm going to assume, is probably, once again, the largest single importation batch of the molar mount to the U.S. I do not know that, so don't quote me on it. Or excuse me, I said 60. 50. I believe it's 50 he got his hands on. So, plans are Marklemar will eventually be putting out another batch of the LVS, but with the molar mount. So if you missed one initially, start saving up. I have a feeling they're going to go for more than what the initial LVSs went for, because I think these cost him more than what these ran him for. Like I said, these are far less common, especially in the US. There's a very small chance there might be some other tweaks done to the LVS. That's all I'm going to say. Fingers crossed. So yeah, he reached out to me. I told him I don't think collectors of these guns, they know the situation. I don't think anyone's going to think he was, holding out or anything like that. I do know he mentioned, possibly trying to get a hold of existing LVS owners to see if they wanted to go ahead and add one of these. The downside is they're not the cheapest in the world. And then you're going to have two. And like I said, there's really nothing else you can put those on. So the good side is, that's one of the things that concerned me about this, is if I broke anything on this, I was like SOL, There's no backup sights on the LVS, at least how we bought them from Marklemar. Spain originally did issue these with a removable rear iron sight, which a lot of people are curious as to why the LVS still had the front sight post. That's why. They did come with a backup removable rear sight. Marklemar was planning on making copies of those if there was enough interest. Once again, last I heard on that, he finally got his hands on one, and it ended up being a lot more intricate than they originally thought. I don't think there's a lot of interest, unfortunately. I think the price was just going to be pretty steep if he did make them. So he hasn't said a definite no on making those backup iron sights. So if you got an LVS and you want a backup iron sight, email them. Get on that list. Fingers crossed, especially with this other batch of 50 or so coming out. Maybe we still can get those backup iron sights. So good news is you got extra parts if you should happen to break anything on your Susat. And once again, from what I understand, these are pretty bulletproof optics. Especially this one with, we got rid of the crappy little windage screws. That had me very excited for this guy. Much easier to use. And I think it just looks much cooler. One thing I did want to do is weigh these. I'm trying to get as much information as I can on here that is not included on Vic's video, which I have a decent amount. So, the L12A1 optic comes in at 1 pound, 9.2 ounces. And since this is a Susat, and I have a feeling not many Americans are going to care, I might have a couple of British viewers on this. That also comes in at 714 grams, or 1.575 pounds, or 25.2 ounces. The Mueller mount, which I have a feeling will be a little bit lighter, and it is, comes in at 1 pound, 12.9 ounces, or 818 grams. I'm assuming kilogram. I speak American, sorry. My school system failed me. 1.805 pounds, and then 28.9 ounces. So it is a little lighter. Also, it is worth pointing out, I don't know how accurate that scale is, because once again, like I've mentioned before, that is the cheapest digital scale I could find on Amazon. So, I apologize to the 3 people that were probably looking forward to this video that saw my teaser about it and then got no follow-up whatsoever. I'm very sorry. I get easily distracted, so did want to go ahead and put this video out there for you guys. Yeah, I think that is it on the Susat Prism Optic. Thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you did like the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And of course, as always, stay safe and stay shiny. And almost forgot. Ho, ho, ho. I left out 2 things. Covers. Covers. I found 2 different covers for these. The kind of coolest one was their quote-unquote parade cover. The vinyl material. It's got a little bungee in there so it fits on snugly. It's not really padded. It's kind of thick up towards that top portion though. This is the one I typically will put on my LVS. I feel like it gives it the most protection. It does fit on there a little funky because these were originally designed for bullpups, and obviously the Setme L is not. You can find these fairly cheap on eBay. I believe this one was a new old stock. Can't remember what I paid. It was not much. But you do have these parade covers. I first noticed this in the oh, criminy, why do I always forget the name of the movie? Harrison Ford, Tom Clancy. He's a CIA agent. He ends up foiling up an assassination attempt on one of the royal families. But it's done like right outside the palace or near the palace, and you see one of the palace guards running up with his SA-80, and he's got this cover on his Susat. So when I got this and I saw these covers, I was like, I remember that one scene in that movie. Then we also have these kind of canvas material covers. Now this is much more fitting for the Setme L. We got the same green color theme going on, but it's just a little bit thinner of material. Probably gives it a little bit less protection. Probably a little more durable, though. I can see this kind of getting more scuffed up and possibly ripped. So these are also available, also fairly cheap. I have seen some versions, and I don't know if it's just the lighting in the picture, of these that they almost look like a funky neon vomit yellow. So I saw those, and I specifically wanted to order one where the picture looked like it was green, because that obviously went with the Setme L much better. So you do have the optic cover options. Okay, that is it, everyone. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and stay shiny.